All right, we're back. Another week. Rush Hour Pod. I'm TW. This is Justin.
Hey y'all.
Um, the Robo event that we talked about last week actually happened, among some other things. I thought we could start there. Did you watch some of the Robo Taxi event or the
I
robot?
I think I saw some of the after the some of the after event where people were interacting with the Optimus robots, and we should maybe talk about that a little bit too, of kind of how that
Yeah,
all went down with those interactions. But from what I did see, it was like pretty. I mean, as an investor, I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe I wish the timeline for some of this stuff was a little faster, but from a where is the vision of where this is going perspective, I was really leaning there, and I thought that all the bets seemed pretty smart in terms of what the company was. When first bought Tesla stock, I never thought, oh, this is just going to be a car company. I always thought it was like a bigger play. That's not necessarily a novel idea, but I think he's really I think Elon's really played into that vision in a way that makes you feel confident in the long term. That's still the direction. What are your thoughts?
yeah. I tried to watch it. I was flying back from San Diego when it started, and it was an hour and like 20 minutes delayed for.
Yeah.
I guess there was something that happened at the actual event that delayed it a bit, but it was cool. Like I'm with you. Like as a stockholder, it's kind of like this is incredible, but how feasible is this in a reasonable timeline? Is this too big of a pivot, considering you're a car company now shifting to a basically a robotics company? Just from the way you've got this robotic car plus robotic van and then actual robots. It's such a huge pivot, but also the guy hits, like he knows vision. Yeah, the vision is cool. It's awesome. I love the concept of it. It just seems like is it too much? It just seems like a lot to launch
Yeah.
all three of those things. Given, and we could talk about the other things he's doing, but like, yeah, that was a lot. And yeah, I saw the same demos. I'll put them up post. The that some of the robots in there sort of talking to two chains and others seemed fake. Like it seemed like there was somebody on the other end of it. It didn't seem like a real robot, but you know, I saw one video where the robot actually says, "I am being assisted by a human today, but
Hmm.
I won't be later."
Yeah.
But or is that kind of the same thing you saw?
Yeah, I think they were clearly being assisted. It was just, I think the responses relative to where the tech is were just so fast
Yeah.
that there was no kind of, it didn't seem like there was any kind of processing. It seemed like the
Yes.
processing was just like immediate.
Yes.
And all of the voices weren't the same as well. You know what I mean? Which I feel like was another tell that they were probably being assisted in some way. And so, okay, I never necessarily thought, like when we had talked about this before, my primary thinking was like these robots will be more of a B2B use case at first, and they'll be in warehouses. It won't necessarily be about them interacting with people, and they'll be picking up, boxes and doing stuff like that. Now, the demos and the videos made it so like, hey, they're gonna have these things right in the home. So I was maybe wrong about that, but relative to the ability to communicate, et cetera, I don't know how quickly they'll be actually able to do that vision that they demonstrated, which seems like more of a B2C vision in the short term. And I do think, even though they've talked about this being more of a consumer vision, I still think ultimately it will be more B2B at first. I think
Yeah.
just to kind of get the kinks out, but I'm bullish. I think it's cool stuff, right?
No,
So I'm
absolutely.
drinking the Kool Aid. I'm drinking the Kool Aid a bit as well.
I mean, the vision of it, like actually executing. You've been through marketing demos and launch things. Like, that's no small feat to launch these things. Given there were no details and exact timelines, but like, hey, he had a car driving through on its own with no steering wheel, with people walking around. That's so the stuff was working, and you got to see the inside. People got to ride in them. It looked really nice, like no question. There are probably kinks to be sort of ironed out, but like for the most part, you kind of got to see, hey, this is his vision. You could have a two-seater car, no steering wheel. You just jump in and go. Pretty cool. And the van, same thing, right? Van can hold up to 20 people. It looked really pretty much like the iRobot car. Um, but like, yeah, 20 people could get in, or 20 robots, maybe. I don't know. 20. I thought, 20 robots coming out of it would have been unreal to way to unveil the van and the robots, but maybe
Mhm. Hey,
that's a
they need to
little
get you.
too.
They need to get you
Yeah,
on
that might
experiential
be too close.
marketing team.
Yeah, no, that's too close to the iRobot movie where they all jump
Well,
out and attack Will Smith.
yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you say that because I think there was. I don't know if you were kind of seeing the controversy on Twitter. I don't know if it was one of if it was the creator by Robot or like one of the people who was kind of on the design team or whatever it was like, hey man, like what's good? You basically took all of our designs and making it seem like this was just Tesla designs when if you look at them, side by side, it's very, very similar. So there was
And
definitely some controversy there around that.
I mean,
If
I
y'all
don't think
saw it
he
on
was
Twitter.
hiding that either. Like, he literally put "we, comma robot," right? Like, instead of "iRobot," he put "we robot." I think it was just that, him calling out that he was doing it, that
Yeah.
that he was making this a reality, which, by all means, is incredible. Like, let's keep it real. Like, get it, robots, yeah, kind of weird, but partially controlled by people or respond. But still, the concept of it now, you can see how it could work in the future. Whether it's 5, 10 years from now, who knows? But like you said, the vision is there, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty
Yeah.
neat. Um,
I think it's all going to be a function of ultimately, regulation and being able to get these vehicles on the road and getting enough data in the real world to improve the experience enough that it can kind of go outside of that more closed
yeah,
city ecosystem because
yeah,
that's what I'm most excited about is down the line, I don't know how many years it will be, maybe 5, 10 or something like that, where I just like either own my own version of kind of the van or car or get picked up by one.
yeah,
It could take me to SF, but it could also take me to Vegas, right,
yeah,
or wherever else, and be able to have that kind of experience. I'm definitely really excited about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And we've talked about it. The progress of this stuff is incredible. Like, in short amount of time, this, we, I guess Elon has said self driving is coming, for a long time, but like, it's here now, right? Like, he showed it full on display. So this is going to be an exciting time, and use cases are going to come up where this makes total sense, and some won't. But I
yeah,
think, out of the gate, this is pretty cool. Like, he's really pushing the pushing all of us forward in terms of thinking, and sort of the future vision of this thing. It's pretty cool. I applaud him, and sort of all the things that he's doing. And that wasn't it. Like, that is already three things in one is already incredible. But like, um, he also, I don't know if you know about the thing he's doing with X. He's also pivoting X. He launched the largest supercomputer in the world. I think, Nvidia said it took him 19 days, which is incredible. A full supercomputer in 19 days is the largest one in the world. It is now going to run, the XAI. I guess maybe some of Tesla's as well. All of their AI algorithms, and apparently this is the fastest. It's the best version to process all of the AI capabilities that are out today. So
wow,
he's pivoting X, into an AI company, while also pivoting Tesla into a robotics company, and doing two massive things in 1 week. So this, and he's not done. He also did, SpaceX. He landed the rocket booster, sort of caught it in that. I don't even know what you call it. I'm not obviously not a rocket scientist, but it's just like to wrap my head around just some of the things he's doing is pretty. It's
I mean, if 100%. Today I dropped out my car because it got recalled, and I got a replacement, and I got it back home. I was like, great, I got this accomplished today, so my
yeah,
kids will be safe in the car. That was micro accomplishment for me. So relative to the stuff that you know Tesla's doing, particularly, or sorry, Tesla, that Elon is doing, particularly on kind of the space and space travel and um, transportation aspect, is like it's really incredible. And I totally agree that like doing all these three things at the same time is unprecedented. Maybe one area, maybe I'll push back on one area to the extent of like, okay, the devil's advocate point would be, hey, it is incredible that he's doing all these things, but would it be better if he was just focused on one? Like, what do you think about that? Would you, as someone who's maybe kind of, at least a fan of his work, at least a fan of his work within the context of what humanity is creating during this time? Would you prefer he just work on like one thing at a time, or do you think that like the best model is working on all this stuff? Because I tend to
I
think
mean,
working on one thing really deeply is probably better, but maybe you have a different opinion.
I've heard him talk about this, and for him, he just takes all of those things that he's working on and prioritize them based on the biggest impact on the world, which is like wild to think about. Like, hey, what he's like, hey, I've got an hour here. I can save billions of dollars here, or I can generate billions of dollars here, or I can move us forward, and maybe it's a lot. It's really a lot, and I agree with you. My gut is like focus on one and do it really well. But the fact that he's actually executing on this, he must have incredible teams. Obviously, he does. He's not doing all this on his own, but he's sort of like picking and choosing and showing his vision, and like really pushing people to step up and make these things happen. So I think it makes me wonder, man, am I too like risk averse like this guy? Like what am I doing? Similar to you, it's like, hey, am I taking enough risk in my life? Am I betting it all on certain things? Like what, just kind of like makes you think, this guy can do all of these things, maybe we can push ourselves a little bit more, given what he's accomplished. Is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's definitely inspiring in a lot of ways. It also makes you think about kind of like why, I don't know, why he's taken some of the other positions he has that kind of
Yeah.
that have kind of been maybe more controversial around, political or social issues or things like that. If only because you're trying to make the biggest impact, you would want to have kind of like the largest TAM or the most people kind of leaned in. But he's taken a bit of a different approach as well. So it is interesting to see kind of how he's blended his kind of political and social elements of what he wants to focus on with
Yeah.
how he wants to impact the world. And he's kind of just, maybe the synopsis is he's just doing it all on his own terms and however
Yeah.
he wants to do it because that's just how he does it. So, definitely an approach. I don't know if it'd be an
Yeah.
approach I would take, but definitely an approach.
Yeah. It is fascinating to watch, like how he's able to balance and juggle all of these things. Like, yeah, I'm kind of amazed that the stuff gets done, but at the same time, like you said, he's setting a vision here, and let's not forget, like he said, the Cybertruck was going to be a $35,000 vehicle, and it was going to come out, 3 years before it did, and he said the Model 3 was also going to be sub 30,000, and that hasn't happened yet. So, like, he definitely thinks big, and then he pushes it down to the others, and maybe it's one of those things, you shoot for the moon, you end up in the stars when you miss. Like he's maybe playing that game, but he is absolutely pushing the limits of everything. And like it's kind of reminds me of some of the Steve Jobs stuff, that you would hear about prior to Steve Jobs' demos. He would be like, I don't care, this is what we're doing. If you have to fake it now, we're going to make it happen later.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's some of the thought on, like, I want instant feedback from the robots, because when this thing comes out, it's going to be that way, whether you like it or not. Like
Yeah.
whether the engineers could do that now or not. He was like, too bad, we're doing it, and we're going to fake it now, but we're going to make it happen later. That mentality seems, I'm not to work and motivate people to, like, make things happen that maybe they didn't think were possible.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you bring that up. I was watching some YouTube videos, and I think there was an interview, former Google CEO, Eric Schmidt. That's right. It's Eric Schmidt, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was talking about have like the importance of having divas in your company, right? Like the people who push you really hard to just kind of do phenomenal things and like get the whole organization behind you. And it can rub people the wrong way, but it's so important to have that when you're, trying to build something that's like entirely new or try to disrupt an industry, et cetera. And you kind of, those personality types are really important to, to the extent of doing, making these outsized, outcomes happen. And clearly, when you think of the Jobs, when you think of even like the Zuckerbergs, or think of Musk, like they kind of have that personality type where they can really push things forward, and but also inspire a lot of people as well. So um, you kind of need that. You kind of need that to be successful.
Yeah, and how much of it is learned versus innate? It's kind of interesting, like where people fall into these things. Like how much of it is like you're given the opportunity to do them and you step up and you do them, or is it that you need the experience before you can do it? It's kind of an interesting thought. What do you think? Is this something that you learn over time, or does this just come
Yeah,
naturally?
I think it's a nature and nurture thing. I think there are some aspects of people's personalities that are just it just is the way they are when they're born. They just kind of you know behave a certain they're just going to behave a certain way because it's just innate to them. And the other parts are like lived experience they have or trials and tribulations, etc. And I think I'm a good person to talk about that to the extent that I'm twin girls, and
Yeah,
they're identical, and literally like every aspect of them is more or less the same, but they have different personalities and different ways of approaching problems and things like that.
huh.
And so they're being raised in the same household. They're pandemic babies, so they spend a lot of time together, but they are different. And so I think it's a combination of both. I think there are some
Huh.
things that are kind of like just innate of this is how this person was going to be, but then also what are the factors based on their upbringing or experiences they had, and interactions with friends, family, et cetera, that further shape who they are.
Yeah, and he's mentioned it before. Having Asperger's kind of helped him get started with all of this. I'm talking to Elon, like him saying, "Oh, because didn't have the social IQ, he could sit in front of a computer and program all night and have fun and not think about it." Whereas other people probably couldn't have done that, and he learned a great deal doing that, and then sort of adapted to socially over time, which I think is really interesting, right? Like he considered himself an engineer and a programmer, but he's also able to do all of these things, and present and kind of step outside of the box of what you'd think of someone with Asperger's, right? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting being around and being present at a time of kind of like a once in a generation, entrepreneur who's not only had tremendous financial success, but also, shaped the world in incredible ways. And, regardless of what necessarily you think about his kind of social or political leanings, what he's done for the EV space, what he's done, for AI, what he's done within robotics and kind of pushing where that can go over time is just generational, right? Like there's no
Yeah,
other way to describe it. And we're kind of living through that and being able to opine on it in a way that like it would have been cool to see these type of conversations about someone like kind of this type of format of people talking in real time about like Einstein, for example, and you have
yeah,
all these creators talking about that. Like I think you can
totally,
kind of perceive him someone in that ilk. So we'll just have to wait and
very cool.
see.
Yeah,
To wait and see
I,
what's next.
last I was gonna say last night I was reading "Who Moved My Cheese." I don't know if you've ever read that book. You
No.
probably read it a long time ago. Okay, you haven't read it. You should check it out. It's incredible. Like it's a quick read. It's like I wouldn't say a kid's book, but it's a dumbed down enough for a kid. Um, but I was reading it to him and we were going over it, and it has definitely has some moments where it made me think of some of the things that he's doing. For those that haven't read it, it's basically Who Moved My Cheese. It's four characters that are in a maze, and two of them are mice and two of them are humans, same size, and how they interact with the
Hmm.
maze and how they think and how they process and how they use emotions and all of these things. And it puts the four characters and they play a different role and how they interact with each other and how they motivate each other and inspire each other and how they kind of ultimately find happiness and get over things. And it's really interesting. I should say take a read. everybody kind of reads it and comes away with something else because
Mm.
you tend to like believe you're one of these you're more like one of these characters, and you kind of like understand them a little more than the other one, so it's a good read. I'd highly recommend it.
All right, we'll definitely check it out.
Check it
Maybe we
out.
can link it in the
Yeah,
description too.
we'll link it below. And the last thing, maybe you probably read about, um, the spaceship thing. What have you read about the impact of the catching the
I just
booster? Like,
think that it's kind of like when he was catching the rockets on those pads out in the water. People were like, there is no way you can do that. It's just impossible to do it. He's like, he's entrepreneurial enough that he's willing to push the bounds, but he's has enough understanding of like physics and some science to be like, okay, well, this is within the realm of possibility. Let's just push it to the edge. And I think this is another one of those things where you kind of push it to the edge in terms of how difficult it is to actually kind of do that while a rocket is landing. And frankly, it's just kind of changed the ability to kind of like transport cargo for forever now. Like in that moment of that successful docking. I wish I could this is tech for non this is for non technical people, man. So
yeah,
I can't give it. So I can't get much more deep into this than you can.
no, I'm looking
More or
at it
less,
like
but
that. Yeah, totally. I look at it. I'm just like, what is happening? I have no idea. It just looks insane that he's landing. What it means for like, I mean, as a complete idiot looking at it, I'm like, yeah, why didn't somebody do this sooner? It totally makes sense.
all right.
Why did you blow the thing up before? But to see it and like, the closest thing I can compare it to is like Avatar, when those other spaceships are landing and reversing the jets. I'm like, well, this is crazy. He's actually doing it. So
Yeah.
anyway, all right,
Yeah.
enough Elon talk. What's the next subject?
Yeah,
Go
no, for
ahead.
sure. I think it's just incredible how much he's accomplishing it's like the rate of which he's accomplishing things, and then generative AI. It's kind of like at the same pace. So you just end up talking about
Yeah,
Gen AI
totally.
stuff at Elon a lot. One of the other stories that came out this week that I thought was pretty interesting was about this podcaster who spends a lot of time interviewing VCs, kind of called 20 VC podcast by Harry Stebbings. And basically, what he does, for those of you who aren't familiar with his work, is he does like pretty in-depth interviews with founders and VCs. It's pretty heralded within kind of Silicon Valley, and I think outside of that as well. And the big news is that he raised a $400 million venture fund, which is like
Good God.
crazy, insane money,
Yeah.
especially based on the fact that this guy does not have technology or VC background. He's kind of coming to this from, as a creator, as someone, as like a podcaster, and he's just built this incredible network and created a tremendous amount of content. And he's been able to, raise this fund. The fund's focused on Europe, committing money to like kind of seed and Series A investments, and really trying to change the perception of Europe, just so people kind of have like a relative sense of what he's focused on. But I just thought it was fascinating in terms of like how the ability to build and create a valuable platform, like an educational platform, relative to this kind of very niche cottage industry that VC is, can raise this type of fund to be investing in companies, and it's kind of totally flipped the model of in many ways I think what people perceived VC to be, and the type of people who could go into it, or the type of models that will work. So I found it really fascinating. I don't know if you saw anything about that raise, but curious to get your
No,
thoughts on
that's
it.
crazy. That's the first I've heard of it. That's amazing. Like, when I think of VCs in terms of like on the more personal note, I always have thought of VCs as if you were starting a business, if you were had no other choice, you could not fund it. You needed funding, and you're willing to sort of fight for your vision, and then you go the VC route. That's how I always
Mm-hmm.
thought about it. Um, it never like interests me, because I was like, you know what? If you're starting a company, you're finding it out. I always like to build something that didn't require VC funding. But a lot of these things today, we've talked about it. It's so hard to break in. You
Yep.
need the funds, and you need the network, and you really do need to fight,
Yep.
to to kind of get yourself through the door. So maybe all these years I've been thinking about it the wrong way, and I should have been embracing it a little more. But like that's kind of where my head has been at. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of what venture is the ability to get deal flow, right? And
Yeah.
so there are a lot of mechanisms to do that. You have people who have just like really deep relationships, so they have one-on-one relationships with industry experts or with other funds, et cetera. You have and may have been practitioners like operators in the space. You have other people who've just kind of like been in venture forever, and they kind of understand the entire ecosystem and they're perceived as thought leaders. And then you have this what seems like emerging class of people who just have tremendous distribution platforms where they're disseminating a lot of value, and people are going there to kind of learn. And then I imagine they're getting deal from that. Like another good example of that, I think, would be the All In podcast, where you have those guys who are VCs, and they kind of hit all those touch points of people who are somewhat storied and
Yep.
have great backgrounds, but now they also have this vehicle, this content vehicle to disseminate their message even more widely. And we talk about this all the time. It's all about maintaining attention from potential, people who could be who may want your offering. In that case, like funding from their funds. So I think that's what Harry's ultimately recognized and built. Again, this is no overnight success. This is over like 10
Yeah.
plus years of building this. The power of these platforms and really good content and disseminating it, and that kind of living everywhere because people are making clips and it's just living on other platforms, and that's how you kind of break through the noise. And so I think this is another model that you'll probably start to see more.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, people are definitely learning and understanding the world around them through influencers, right? You watch content, it feels more authentic. You feel like you have a connection in a community, and there's a trust built in there. Why not add this to the mix? Not just products and drinks and food and all. It makes sense that you would actually trust someone who's interviewed and talked to all of these founders on this front. I love it. I think it's really great. I mean,
Yeah,
I now do that. I watch all kinds of content on YouTube in terms of investing and advice on random things. It just seems like such a great avenue to sort of hear everyone's opinions.
yeah, for sure. And it's I think it's interesting as well because I think it breaks up these models in terms of the perception of like who can participate, which I think is better for kind of like overall inclusion as well. So, if you see, if you're really good at creating content, you can create this model, you can hustle and get, smart folks on there, then you can kind of break into really any industry. Like there's really no more barriers to
Right.
executing a vision of what you want to do or what you want to become based on the tools that are out there. And they're only becoming easier to use and more ubiquitous. And so I think, overall, it's better for kind of, people trying to build overall, which I think,
Yeah, I love it.
which I'm always a proponent of.
On that note, I was going to bring up we have both talked about how do we grow our little channel here. What are some things we're going to do? And I thought we just walk you guys through, or whoever's listening now, through sort of this journey. I think the first one we're going to try is I live right next to Cal State, and I'm gonna print some business cards that basically are a quick snapshot of the podcast, and I'm gonna go down there, maybe go to the business school and see if I can drum up some subscribers and listeners and get them awareness, and we'll pass out 100 of these things and let's see what happens. I'll do that and I'll report back out. What does that look like? How did it work? What was the reaction? Did we see any lift? Did we get any kind of feedback? Were people just throwing them away? Like it'll be interesting. I love like real world sort of like feedback in terms of like there's no better way than going out there and talking to people and seeing
Yeah.
um, what helps, what doesn't, what kind of content they're looking for. Um, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think that'll be cool. And maybe even give people a little more context of why, like, oh, you guys have some, resonance in the industry and you have these channels, et cetera, why haven't you kind of pushed this, of this early group now who's watching us, why haven't you kind of put this out more broadly? Part of it is like one, just a intellectual exercise of like, how do we create content on this channel and how do we try to refine what we're doing and kind of understanding, the space and figuring out the right way to kind of disseminate a message. But the other piece is, how do we think about this content being ingested by people outside of just like our kind of core group and network and make sure that it's really resonating. And so we've been trying to do some kind of like experiments and tests outside of that for intellectual curiosity, but also because we think it's going to have more staying power, the type of
Right.
content, by going to, groups and individuals who are kind of outside of our core network. And so,
Right.
yeah,
Because
definitely
I
excited to
mean,
kind of report back on that.
yeah, you always hear about the people in your network are like you. So if you're trying to reach people outside of your network by going in your network, it doesn't make sense. Like it just doesn't make sense, right? Like it's not going to reach the people that we're ultimately hoping to reach. So it'll be interesting. We'll do that. Maybe we'll test. I mean, I reached out, put some ads on Bart. I'll put those up. Maybe we could talk about the what the ad looks like next time. But like, what would happen if we put an ad on a subway station that had a link and some call to action? We'll kind of walk you through how we thought about it. I think on the next podcast. Does that work for you, Justin? Maybe like
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
we'll put it up and be like, hey, here's the ad. Here's what we're thinking. Let's see how this thing actually does, and kind of walk you guys through it. Similar to any business, obviously, we're not trying to monetize. We're just trying to get people's attention. But it's still a similar exercise in terms of like, hey, you got to get your phone out. You got to scan the QR code. You got to look at the content. You got to subscribe. There's a lot of steps.
Yeah,
It's
there's
a
a lot of
lot to
steps.
ask of people. We talk about like getting people's attention. It's really hard. Like you really have to appreciate the people that are out here doing it at a big, huge scale. So for us, like you said, it's a good exercise in terms of understanding what it takes and how to grow. And ultimately, we hope it not only help us, but other people that are thinking about doing stuff like this. We'll just take and share it. And I feel like that's what we're here for, right?
No, 100%. I think this is always an exercise of doing this. The original intention of us doing this was like catching up and having, a way for you and I to like stay closer, have fun, and also have a digital footprint for
Yeah.
our friends and family to kind of say, oh, well, how do we think about things during this time? And I think that's what's, provide a great setup for us to kind of continue to push out content over time, that original mission. And then, this other piece, which is like, okay, well, how do we start to kind of expand outside of our existing group and try new things? It'll just be kind of a fun experiment to see, what works, what doesn't work, and be able to
Yeah.
report back on that. So it's
I mean,
all,
because
all
you
in line with the
hear
initial piece.
it's funny, you hear about people that do like, hey, everyone starts a podcast and then it just after two episodes, I think is the rule. People it just goes away.
Yeah.
But people doing it and continually doing it are few and far between. And I think usually, like we've talked about, the grind eventually pays off because you figure it out. And we'll see. Like we have, our thoughts were doing it for fun and content and sort of capturing all these moments in time so we can go back and look at them later. I think that works much better than, hey, I'm just trying to monetize an audience
Yeah.
and just trying to
100%.
be Mr. Beast and grow. Like that's very different. So I'm excited to see what happens and that, like learning about, hey, what does a subway ad actually do, and what are the thoughts behind creating one and marketing it? Like these are things that lots of marketers are probably going to think about, right? And they're going to YouTube and say, hey, how do subway ads work out of home? How does it work? Is there any evidence of growing YouTube or whatever? Like, so we're going to have some real data, and we're more than happy to share
Yeah.
where we are through that
It's,
process. So it'll be
yeah, it's
fun.
going to be fun. And, this is something that I feel like I've talked about before. You may have discussed it as well, as like, as we get later on in our careers, it becomes harder and harder to kind of keep ourselves on top of the most recent trends and what
Yeah,
works and what doesn't, and explore new avenues and channels. And like, this is a way to kind of keep us both honest in that and have fun and then get some time to catch up and wrap. And so like, all those things make it a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And
We'll
in a
get
good
better at
space.
editing. I'll stop breathing into the mic that's on top. The last one
No,
killed me.
I like you breathing into it. It's good. It's a good vibe.
Like
It's like an
that mic was
ASMR.
that mic was right into my breath. That was
I'm gonna
terrible.
start
That was
calling
killing
you.
me.
I'm gonna start calling you Darth TW.
Yeah, seriously, that was
Darth
terrible.
Wong.
I apologize for those that sat through any of that. I'm sure we'll fix that. But anyway, we'll get better, and we're gonna try to play with the edits and make the shorts a little better. Give us feedback. I mean, I get every once in a while we'll get 1,000 views and something, and we really don't know why. So we'll figure it out. A lot of it is probably like headlines and timing and all that, but um, we'll play around with it, and maybe that's something we could share as well. I don't know. People are interested in that. Be like, hey, maybe every month we can sit there and like evaluate our channel right on this show and be like, what worked, what didn't, why, what do you think, why, and just talking through that.
No, I love that. I think
Maybe that's a
I
fun
like anything that
experiment
keeps
for
us
family.
honest, that
Yeah,
shares some information, and will be interesting. I guess for other people here, I'm down. That's the whole
because
point.
like yeah, I think truthfully, lots of people I've heard it many times from friends like, hey, we should start. I should just do a podcast, and then you never do it.
Yeah,
But you're curious, and you listen to all these, and we're actually doing it, and we'll walk you through the steps so you don't have to. Like you can basically say, well, this is what they learned. Do I want to start one or not? And we can give you real feedback. I think that's a you know, lots of people talk about it, like right, like
yeah,
no, we actually did it, but I'm just saying, lots of people are like, "Hey, we should do that. We'll do it next week," and then they just never do it.
yeah,
And now you can go back and watch to see what actually happens when you do it. So that'll be fun.
yeah, yeah. You got to surround yourself by doers and builders, and you're the sum of the five people, or so who you spend the most time with. And TW is definitely in that ilk for me. So I
Yeah,
think that's why I've been able to kind of like accomplish a lot. So
yeah.
uh,
Just get it done, right? We'll figure it out. That's how we always say that. Well, let's just do it and figure it out. Like, have faith that we'll figure it out. So
yeah,
enjoy the ride with us, I guess.
yeah.
Anything else? No, it's 2 o'clock.
Uh, no, man. I think we went through some good stuff. I really like this ending part of the conversation about kind of our motivations, and I think that's really kind of helpful and interesting, especially for this early group of folks who are watching our content. That can be inspirational and like just kind of putting yourself out there. I think this is a skill set that is important as we kind of move forward in the new economy and how people ingest knowledge, et cetera. So if you're kind of just even interested from an intellectual perspective, put yourself
Yeah,
out there and
yeah. You
and
hear it all the time. Just make some content, and we did it at Twitch. Remember, we'd go down and we'd be
mhm.
like, all right, step one, we're gonna play Fortnite. We have no idea how to play it. We're watching it all day. So we started playing it, and then we started, then was like, all right, now we got to stream it. We're decent. See what
Yep.
that's like, and then now this. I mean, it's fun for
Yeah, you got to
an old head like
continue
me. It's
continue learning. You don't need to.
yeah,
That doesn't need to stop.
yeah. It keeps me young. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
you look good, man. So keep doing what you need to do to stay young.
Exactly. I got the Pharrell thing, lotion treatment
There
going.
you go. You got to. It's all the berries and oils, and yeah, exactly all
He's
that.
from Virginia, so
Hey, listen, there's something in the water there.
yeah,
Apparently, it's
for
the
sure.
canes. Somehow, it's the canes grease.
it's
Just
that
slap that
that
on, and then it'll keep you young.
it's that cane sauce. It's special. It's got a lot of preservatives, so maybe
Yeah, I'm
that's
about to
the trick.
say. Yeah, there you go. That's a trick.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Till next
Well,
week.
till next week, like and subscribe. Thanks, y'all for spending some time with us,
Yeah.
and talk soon.
Peace.
Peace.